Well, now that the new Hellraiser movie is out, it's time we all get collectively mad at Hollywood for taking a classic and then remaking it into a bland, lifeless, pointless product for the masses to consume. At least that's how I expected to feel going into this. This one was actually pretty good. Do I like it better than the original? Nope. And the main reason why comes down to how the Cenobites are portrayed. Since a lot of the original gore stuff is absent from the remake in favor of centering the film around the Cenobites, these beings will be the main focus of this comparison, albeit with some detours to cover a few key aspects. I'm going to be talking exclusively about the original Hellraiser and the remake. I'll be ignoring the book because book-to-movie adaptations are not one-to-one and almost never should be, despite what some people think. And I will be ignoring all other movies in the series because none of them are that interesting. And yes, that includes the second one, Fight Me. For those who haven't seen it, the original Hellraiser is a weird movie, to put it lightly. It's this bizarre mix of psychosexual and cosmological horror which feels so many worlds apart, but at the same time actually works? With any horror property, there's this inherent problem that as the story goes along, the audience will naturally become desensitized to the thing they are supposed to be scared of. Unless if your film happens to be titled The Thing, or your characters are the things. The solution in the original Hellraiser is to base the beginning of this movie around the gore and body horror with some hints that there is a greater, unseen force at play. And just when that starts to wane and get a little tedious, this happens. And now suddenly, we have entered a completely different horror movie. All this preamble to say, the Cenobites are used sparingly. They have much less of a direct role in this script. They're more the backdrop for the drama between Kirsten and her stepfamily. And interesting for a horror villain, anti-hero, creature, is that they were never really meant to be creepy and sadistic. What makes the Cenobites horrifying is how cold and removed they are. The gravitas and grammatical strangeness with which they speak.
Explorers in the further regions of experience. Demons to some, angels to others.
And the way they leer at people while standing completely still, constantly in control of every situation. They're meant to be imposing, and the first film completely nails this feeling of power. Can you name another horror movie where the demonic creature stands completely still delivering exposition in a mundane setting, and yet it is still frightening? These characters rarely emote joy or displeasure in their faces. Their words are the only indication of their feelings. The disconnect of these two elements is disconcerting to our minds. The obscuring of their eyes, either through glasses, mist, or makeup, is also unnerving. So much of human interaction is dependent on eye contact, so removing this element fundamentally dehumanizes the Cenobites in a way which irks us on a primal level. It nails that spot in the uncanny valley where things are simultaneously very humanoid, yet horribly askew. But let's not gloss over that point about eye contact, because now we should discuss film language. Oh god, here we go. Editing is all about the eyes. How we understand where characters are positioned in a room is guided by how the scene is edited. The traditional path is to start in a wide establishing shot, and then slowly punch in as the scene progresses. This original hospital scene is intentionally hard to understand spatially. We don't really see where everyone is standing in relation to each other until later. Martin and Randall, the editors, often avoid cutting on eyeline. Let me break some components down on a spatial level. Many of the shots in this hospital scene glide across the room in this strange, yet claustrophobic semicircular arc. Yet, everyone is standing still. At a further distance, this wouldn't be a problem, but anything closer than a medium implies someone's point of view. In contrast to that assumption, the off-putting, peculiar, constricted shot composition and movement can't possibly be indicative of anyone's perspective. You want to identify with Kirsten, but the impossibility of the camera movement tells your brain something is wrong. The fact that we also jump around from Cenobite to Cenobite in singles adds to this befuddlement. Now let's talk about eyeline. For most of the beginning of the scene, Kirsten's eyes are either completely obscured by smoke or shut in fear. There's one cut on eyeline for the initial appearance of Pinhead, but once he starts talking, any eyeline cuts are one-sided from Pinhead. The next eyeline cut given to Kirsten is when she asks if they have done this before. In this moment, she realizes she may have an out and starts to take some control, causing the subtle horror to diminish ever so slightly. Yet, the edits following this undercut the newfound power. As Kirsten and Pinhead talk, we cut around the room to the other Cenobites. The female one even talks despite the fact that Kirsten is presumably looking towards Pinhead. The editing intentionally confounds your eyeball holes. This back and forth of control versus not control continues until Kirsten offers to take them to Frank. At this point, we finally get a wider shot that shows us 3 of the Cenobites side by side, letting us finally see the bigger picture of the room, just as Kirsten sees the bigger picture of her predicament. I could keep going, but you hopefully get the point. By editing in this way, the audience constantly has trouble guessing when the next cut will occur and who will be cut to. This probably sounds foreign to most people who aren't familiar with editing, but trust me, eyeline matters a lot. The fact that the scene is edited this way makes it disorienting and effective. I challenge you to remember where everybody is in the room on your first attempt. Or better yet, show this movie to a friend, pause it right before the wider shot, and ask them where everyone is standing. They won't get it right. In most movies, that kind of unclear editing and cinematography would be considered bad, but for horror it works. You will remember this scene later. Circling back to content rather than form, the perk of the Cenobites in this film is that they are not the explicit antagonist. This allows the film to position their morality and motivations in uncertain terms. The first film doesn't imply the Cenobites take any explicit joy from the act of hurting people. It instead seems to suggest that they lack the ability to delineate between pleasure and pain. They appear bound by an ancient contract, assuming anyone who calls them is psychotic enough to desire such a thing. Of course, the levels of pain they enact are far beyond even the most devoted masochist's wildest dreams. At least I hope. But again, it's that disconnect which prompts fear. The Cenobites are in no way overtly animalistic, nor do they appear generically sadistic.
This isn't for your eyes.
Even when they do torture Uncle Frank at the end, it isn't as if they appear to be reveling in the pain they have wrought, but perhaps instead passionate about their work. The single line I see as a counterpoint to this interpretation is when Pinhead says,
Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
But even here, he's quantifying her emotions in such a shrewd way, talking about this proposal as if it were a business deal rather than an act of grave human pain. I see the Cenobites in the first Hellraiser as a case of less being more, where the slow allusion to, but never explicitly spelling out their capabilities and motivations, creates an ominous feeling of fear that sticks with you. For all I know, they can enjoy torturing people for their own masochistic pleasure, but the movie leaves it mysterious and convoluted. The ambiguity makes it scarier. Which, me praising this movie for restraint is ironic given how extra and shocking this film was for its time. I know Saw probably makes this movie's gore look tame by comparison, but there are moments which still feel relatively transgressive. And images which are sure to stick with me for a very, very, very long time.
Jesus wept.
Now, again, I must stress, I really like the new Hellraiser. I think the portrayal of the Cenobites works in this movie, but I also think they have transformed them into something different. The new Hellraiser takes the concept of the Cenobites and changes them from intimidating demigods to creepy torture monsters. Rather than having Pinhead's voice boom across the earth, she speaks in hushed whispers. Yet, the dialogue retains that same alien eloquence. Sure, there are some aberrations here and there, but for the most part they really nail that manner of speaking.
But the box I leave in yours. If not you, another.
So gold noodle star for that. Let's concern ourselves now with the appearance. Rather than having them dress in overdone leathery BDSM outfits, they have this plasticky skin, likely as somewhat of an homage to the gore components of the original. The creatures are inherently sneakier, slimier, stealthier. They don't command attention, they blend into the background. It's a bit more traditional as far as horror concepts go. Well executed? Absolutely, but traditional nonetheless. One great horror scene in this new film which rushes to mind is when Pinhead is torturing the roommate. There's some great gore, shot choices, and sounds to make this scene effective, but it also calls attention to a change in the Cenobites that I find to be strictly worse. The Cenobites in this film are far more emotionally expressive, somewhat in their faces and very much in how they choose and emote words. For once, that isn't exactly a good thing. It's made explicit in this film that the Cenobites enjoy the torture they thrust onto other people. To me, this is far less intimidating or scary than the original. The mystery and ambiguity of what the Cenobites feel in the first film, again, dehumanize them enough to push them into the uncanny valley. I know what these guys want. Once I see them torture one person, I know what they want for the whole film. It's not as engaging when the motivation is discernible. Yes, this moment was effective horror, but I don't see it living with me in quite the same way. I can say the same when it comes to just about every other horrific aspect in this film. The new Cenobites look good, but I won't have them burned into my brain the same way these ones are. For one thing, that's probably because the designs are just a little bit worse, despite some great effort. And second, to circle back to a point I made earlier, I can see their eyes in every medium and close-up. There is little to no obscuring on any Cenobite's eyes in this film. Okay, there are clear shots of their eyes in the original, but at least there were more attempts to obscure and make them hard to follow. In this movie, I can pretty much always see their pupils from the bright spots. And the film is edited in a way to cut on sight lines a lot, like you would traditionally want to do for a classical, well-made edit. Even when the film doesn't cut on eyeline, it isn't done in a way which feels disorienting. You can always tell where everyone is standing in the scene, so that feeling which made your brain uncomfortable is gone because you can tell where everything is and where everyone is looking at all times. And no, the ones without eyes don't count. It doesn't fall into the uncanny valley the same way. I could forgive them for making this alteration in the edit if they compensated by making other decisions which violated convention. If there was more of a subversion of familiar film language or structure to make these punctual moments stick out. But as it is, the emphasis here seems purely visual to a fault. I would be willing to bet this movie might have more creepy stills in it than the original. But films move. Cinema is a language. This film takes full advantage of making the picture itself creepy without fully considering how these images work in tandem with each other, without realizing that the assembly itself can be creepy. But movies since 1927 have been more than just images, right? What about sound?
Cut!
No other aspect to me exemplifies how different the Cenobites are than the soundtrack. The soundtrack to the new movie is not as good as the original, but again, I don't think it's explicitly bad. However, it seems to take inspiration from the original, and in this new context, that inspiration just doesn't work. When I think of the Cenobites theme, the first thing which springs to mind are those booming bells which drown out the other instruments for a brief moment. It plays that sound as the Cenobites step on screen, connoting their far-reaching, intimidating, ringing power. In this film, they try to use an organ for the same cue. But it just doesn't work. These Cenobites are quiet, creepy. They feel like a creature which would be accompanied by subtle high strings, not some blaring, attention-demanding musical cues. In short, this element is horribly out of place and distracting because the keys imply what you are looking at is meant to be intimidatingly scary, not subtly creepy. Okay, I know very little about music. I apologize that you had to hear that in layman's terms. Now let's get back to the subject I actually know remotely anything about. I can understand why some people prefer the new movie to the original. It has a more traditional script, more coherent and singular vision, better characterization, and a conclusion which is much, much, much better. Even though I find this movie to have a bit of an overuse and desensitization problem, it would be dishonest to deny how much more narratively satisfying and polished this ending is in comparison to everything past this moment in the original film. If I can levy any praise upon this film to leave the doubters in shambles, it's that it has definitely incentivized me to check out the rest of Bruckner's work. The fact that there isn't a single jump scare in the remake is very commendable. Every reaction this movie produces in its audience is earned. It knows what it has to present as creepy, and it goes with that. But the presentation is far too pedestrian and safe for what I wanted out of a Hellraiser movie. It sticks to the rules where breaking a few would have benefited it a lot more.
In short,
What it presents is creepy, but how it is presented feels ripped from the safe guide of a good horror movie format, taking a property that was regarded for being transgressive and retrofitting it to an already understood formula. And the familiar, to me, is never as disturbing as the unknown.
We have such sights to show you.
And yes, I also miss how sexually charged the first film was.
Please, come forward.